Human took in alien sisters and their sick grandmother. By morning, his life had changed forever. The Terrio sunset painted the workshop walls a deep amber as Ray Mercer tightened the final bolt on the moisture evaporator. His muscles flexed beneath his oil-stained tank top, the fabric clinging to his broad shoulders. 15 years as a combat engineer in the frontier wars had left him with more scars than medals, but his hands remained steady, perfect for the delicate machinery work that kept the few settlers on this backwater desert planet alive. "That should do it," he muttered to himself, wiping sweat from his brow with a forearm. The workshop, a converted military bunker half buried in sand, wasn't much, but it was his. No commanding officers, no alien insurgents, no politics. Just him, his tools, and the endless Terrio desert. The wind picked up outside, whistling through the cracks in the metal shutters. Ray glanced at the atmospheric monitor on his workbench. The needle had swung into the red zone. "Damn it," he growled. "Another sandstorm." He secured the workshop, double-checking the seals on the doors and windows. Terrio's sandstorms weren't just inconvenient, they were deadly. Microscopic silicate particles could shred unprotected lungs in minutes. Ray settled in for a long night, pouring himself 2 fingers of Martian whiskey. The amber liquid caught the light as he raised it to his lips. The burn was familiar, comforting. The howl of the wind grew louder, drowning out the soft hum of the air recyclers. Ray was halfway through his drink when he heard it, a sound that didn't belong. A knocking, faint but distinct, against the metal of his front door. He frowned. Nobody in their right mind would be out in a storm like this. He grabbed his pulse pistol from its drawer, tucking it into the back of his waistband. Old habits died hard. The knocking came again, more urgent this time. Ray approached cautiously, checking the external camera feed. The image was grainy with static from the storm, but he could make out 3 small figures huddled against the door. Not raiders then. Raiders didn't bring children. He disengaged the locks and pulled the heavy door open, bracing against the howling wind. Sand immediately pelted his face. But what caught his attention were the 3 aliens standing on his doorstep. 2 small children with sky-blue skin and flowing white hair that seemed to move with a life of its own. Behind them, an elderly woman of the same species. Her silver hair dull compared to the children's, her face deeply lined with age and exhaustion. The older child, maybe 9 by human standards, stood protectively in front of the younger one. Her large almond-shaped eyes, iridescent like opals, studied Ray with wary intelligence. "Please," she said in accented standard, "my grandmother is sick. We need shelter." The younger child, perhaps 6, peered around her sister. Unlike the older ones, caution, her eyes held nothing but innocent hope. Ray hesitated only a moment before stepping aside. "Get in, quickly." They hurried inside and Ray sealed the door against the raging storm. The elderly woman stumbled, and Ray caught her with strong arms, feeling how light she was, fragile as a bird. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice like dry leaves. "I'm Ray," he said, helping her to his worn couch. "Ray Mercer." "I am an Ain," the grandmother replied. "These are my granddaughters, Fina and Tira." The older girl, Fina, maintained her protective stance, while little Tira had already begun exploring the workshop with curious eyes. "You're Australians," Ray observed, recognizing their species. They were uncommon this far out on the rim. "What are you doing on Terrio?" Ain coughed, a painful, rattling sound. "We had no choice. Our settlement was attacked." Ray moved to his small kitchen area, putting water on to boil. "Attacked by what?" "The Vorax," Fina said, the word dripping with fear and hatred. Ray's hand stilled on the kettle. The Vorax were savage predators, more animal than sentient, used by the hegemony as shock troops during the war. He'd faced them in combat. Few survived such encounters. "I thought they were contained after the peace treaty," he said carefully. Ain shook her head sadly. "Some escaped control. They found our research outpost 3 days ago. We were studying the desert flora." Her eyes welled with tears. "My daughter, Celine, she held them off while we escaped. She's gone now." The little one, Tira, looked up at the mention of her mother, her lower lip trembling. Ray felt something stir in his chest, an emotion he'd thought long buried beneath scar tissue and regret. Compassion, maybe, or responsibility. "You're safe here," he said, surprising himself with how much he meant it. "Oh, let me fix you something to eat." As he prepared a simple meal from his stores, Ray watched the family. The grandmother's illness was obvious. Her breathing labored, her movements pained. The girls were exhausted but resilient, especially Fuina, who hadn't relaxed her vigilance even inside the safety of the bunker. They ate in relative silence, the storm raging outside. When they finished, Ray set up his bedroom for Ineen and the children, insisting on taking the couch himself despite Ineen's weak protests. As he settled onto the worn cushions, listening to the wind howl, Ray wondered what the morning would bring. He'd been alone for so long, content with his solitude. Now, with 3 alien refugees under his roof, he felt something he hadn't experienced in years, a sense of purpose. Little did he know that by sunrise, his quiet exile would be shattered forever. Ray woke to the sound of engines, not the familiar whine of civilian transports or the steady hum of moisture harvesters, but the aggressive growl of military-grade thrusters. His eyes snapped open, years of combat training kicking in before his conscious mind fully engaged. The storm had passed during the night, leaving an eerie stillness in its wake. Ray rolled off the couch in one fluid motion, grabbing his pulse pistol from beneath the cushion. The chronometer on the wall read 0547, just before local sunrise. He moved to the small view screen by the door, tapping the control pad. The external cameras showed 3 vessels landing in a triangular formation about 200 meters from his workshop. Their design was unmistakable. Krell scavenger ships, with their distinctive insectoid silhouettes and salvaged weaponry, bolted haphazardly to their hulls. "Shit," Ray muttered. Krell scavengers were the vultures of the galaxy, following in the wake of Vorax attacks to pick through the remains. They weren't above taking living merchandise either. A soft sound behind him made Ray turn. Fina stood there, her white hair disheveled from sleep, her opalescent eyes wide with fear. "They found us," she whispered. "How?" Ray asked, keeping his voice low. "Our escape pod. It has a locator beacon we couldn't disable." Her small blue hands clenched into fists. "I heard them talking before we fled. They work with the Vorax sometimes, trade information for salvage rights." Ray's jaw tightened. During the war, he'd seen what happened to Australian captives in Krell hands. Their empathic abilities made them valuable commodities in certain markets. "Wake your grandmother and sister," he said, checking the charge on his pulse pistol, quietly. While Fina roused her family, Ray moved to a storage locker near his workbench. He punched in a code he hadn't used in years, and the locker hissed open to reveal his old combat gear, a chest plate of reactive armor, tactical gauntlets, and a military-grade assault rifle. He was strapping on the armor when Ineen emerged from the bedroom, supporting herself against the wall. Her condition had worsened overnight, her blue skin now pale as morning frost. "You should save yourselves," she said, her voice barely audible. "Leave me." Ray secured the final strap on his armor. "Not happening?" Little Tira appeared behind her grandmother, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "Are the bad bugs here?" "Yes, sweetheart," Ray said, surprised by the gentleness in his own voice. "But they won't get past me." A harsh, metallic clang reverberated through the workshop as something struck the exterior door. Ray checked the camera feed again. 6 Krell warriors approached, their chitinous exoskeletons gleaming in the early morning light. Each stood nearly 7 feet tall with 4 upper limbs ending in either claws or energy weapons. "There's a panic room," Ray told the Australians, pointing to a concealed door beside the kitchen unit. "Reinforced walls, separate air supply. Get inside, lock it, and don't open it for anyone but me." "You can't fight them alone," Fina protested, her young face set in determination that reminded Ray of soldiers he'd served with. "I've faced worse odd," Ray replied with a confidence he half felt. He'd fought Krell before, but that was with a squad of trained Marines, not alone protecting 3 civilians. Another impact shook the door. The locking mechanism wouldn't hold much longer. Nine placed a frail hand on Ray's armored forearm. "You risk your life for strangers." Why? Ray thought of the years since the war, the solitude, the nightmares, the emptiness. Because it's what humans do. The good ones, anyway. He ushered them toward the panic room, but Fina hesitated at the threshold. "What's the code to open it from inside?" she asked. "7392, Ray told her. "Now go." The door sealed behind them just as the workshop entrance burst inward with a shower of sparks and twisted metal. Ray took position behind his workbench, rifle braced against his shoulder. The first Krell entered cautiously, compound eyes swiveling to scan the room. Ray waited until 3 were inside before he fired. The rifle's report was deafening in the confined space as he put a 3-round burst through the lead Krell's thorax. The alien collapsed in a spray of yellowish ichor. The others reacted instantly, energy weapons discharging wildly. Ray ducked as superheated plasma scorched the wall behind him. He rolled to a new position, taking down a second Krell with a clean headshot. The remaining 4 spread out, using the doorway and workshop equipment as cover. One fired a barrage that caught the edge of Ray's workbench, melting the metal and sending tools clattering to the floor. "We know you have the Australians, human," the largest Krell chittered in broken standard. "Give them to us, and you may live." Ray answered with another burst of rifle fire, catching one in the shoulder joint. The alien shrieked, its wounded limb hanging useless. "That's not very friendly," Ray called out, ejecting a spent thermal clip. "Didn't your mother teach you to knock?" The Krell responded with another volley, forcing Ray deeper into cover. He was outnumbered and outgunned, fighting a defensive battle he couldn't win through firepower alone. But Ray hadn't survived 15 years of war by relying solely on brute force. He reached into a pocket of his tactical vest, removing a small device, a sonic disruptor, calibrated to the frequency of Krell auditory organs. He activated it and slid it across the floor toward the invaders. The effect was immediate. The Krell clutched at their head plates, mandibles clicking in agony. Ray didn't waste the opportunity, rising from cover to dispatch 2 more with precision fire. The last Krell, the largest one, recovered faster than expected. It charged Ray with surprising speed, all 4 arms extended. Ray's rifle clicked empty at the worst possible moment. He dropped the weapon and drew his pulse pistol, but the Krell was already upon him. A powerful claw knocked the pistol away, while another seized Ray by the throat, lifting him off the ground. "The females!" it hissed, mandibles inches from Ray's face. "Where?" Ray struggled for breath, his vision beginning to darken at the edges. His hands fumbled at his belt, finding the combat knife sheathed there. With a desperate surge of strength, he drove the blade into the joint where the Krell's arm met its thorax. The alien screeched, its grip loosening just enough for Ray to break free. He followed with a kick to what passed for the Krell's knee, sending it stumbling backward. Ray didn't give it time to recover. He retrieved his pistol and fired 3 shots into the Krell's head, ending the threat. Silence fell over the workshop, broken only by Ray's heavy breathing and the distant sound of the remaining Krell ships powering up. The survivors were retreating, for now. Ray staggered to the panic room, leaving bloody footprints on the floor. He hadn't even noticed he'd been wounded. 7392, he called out, voice hoarse from the Krell stranglehold. The door slid open to reveal 3 pairs of wide, opalescent eyes. Fina stepped forward first, taking in the carnage with a composure beyond her years. "You're hurt," she said, pointing to a gash on Ray's leg where a Krell claw had penetrated his armor. "I've had worse," he replied, though the adrenaline was wearing off and the pain was beginning to register. Tira rushed forward, wrapping her small arms around Ray's waist. "You saved us," she said, her voice muffled against his armor. Ray awkwardly patted her white hair, unused to such displays of affection. "They'll be back," he warned, looking to Anine, "with reinforcements." The elderly Australian nodded weakly. "Then we must not be here when they return." The distinctive hum of another approaching ship cut through the aftermath of battle. Ray limped to the view screen, expecting to see Krell reinforcements. Instead, a sleek vessel descended from the morning sky, its elegant curves and pearlescent hull marking it as Australian design. "That's a diplomatic courier," Anine whispered, her voice suddenly stronger. She clutched at Ray's arm. "The Australian Diplomatic Corps?" The ship touched down with barely a disturbance of sand, its landing struts extending gracefully. A boarding ramp extended, and a single figure emerged. Even from a distance, Ray could see she was Australian, tall and lithe with the characteristic blue skin and flowing white hair that seemed to float around her as if underwater. She wore a form-fitting uniform of silver and blue that accentuated her graceful movements. Tira pressed her face against the view screen. "Mama?" she gasped, her small voice breaking with hope. Before Ray could stop her, the child had bolted for the damaged door and out into the open. "Tira, wait!" Ray called, but the girl was already running across the sand toward the newcomer. The Australian woman froze for a moment, then dropped to her knees, arms outstretched. Tira flew into her embrace, followed seconds later by Finna, who had darted past Ray with equal speed. "It's her," Anine confirmed, tears streaming down her lined face. "My daughter Selene. She's alive." Ray watched the reunion, feeling like an intruder on a private moment. The woman, Selene, held her daughters tightly, her white hair enveloping them like a protective cocoon. Even from this distance, he could see her shoulders shaking with emotion. "You should go to her," Ray said to Anine, offering his arm for support. The elderly Australian leaned heavily against him as they made their way outside. The morning sun was harsh, but the air was still cool from the night. Ray was acutely aware of his appearance. Bloodied, disheveled, still wearing battle-scarred armor. Selene looked up as they approached, and Ray felt something unexpected ripple through him. Her eyes were like her daughter's, opalescent and luminous, but there was a depth to them that spoke of intelligence and strength. Her face was heart-shaped, with high cheekbones and full lips that parted slightly in surprise when she saw her mother. "Mother," she called, her voice musical yet strong. She rose, still holding her daughter's hands, and moved toward them with fluid grace. "Selene," Anine breathed, "we thought you were dead, and you'd." Selene released her daughters to embrace her mother. "When the Vorex attacked, I was trapped in the communication center. I managed to send a distress signal before escaping in a maintenance pod." Her gaze shifted to Ray, taking in his combat gear and injuries. "And who is this?" "This is Ray," Tira announced proudly. "He saved us from the bad bugs." Selene's eyes widened. "The Krell found you?" "They tracked our escape pod," Finna explained. "Ray fought them off." Selene studied Ray with new intensity, her gaze lingering on the wound on his leg. "You risked your life for my family?" Ray shrugged, suddenly self-conscious. "Anyone would have done the same." "No," Selene said softly. "They wouldn't have." She stepped closer, and Ray caught a scent like night-blooming flowers. "My people owe you a debt, Ray." "Mercer," he supplied. "Ray Mercer." "Ray Mercer," she repeated, the name sounding exotic in her accent. "I am Selene Valarian, cultural attaché to the Terran Alliance." She reached out, placing her palm against his chest, just above his heart. Ray felt a strange warmth spread from the point of contact. Australians were touch telepaths, he remembered, able to sense emotions through physical contact. "Your heart is strong," she murmured, "and kind." Ray felt heat rise to his face that had nothing to do with the desert sun. Selene was beautiful in an alien way, her features both familiar and exotic. The attraction he felt was immediate and powerful. "The Krell will return," he said, forcing himself to focus on the danger. "We need to get your family to safety." Selene nodded, her expression turning serious. "My ship can accommodate us all. I have medical facilities aboard for my mother." "I'll gather what supplies we need," Ray said, turning back toward his workshop. Selene caught his arm, her touch sending another wave of warmth through him. "You're injured. Let me help you." Inside the workshop, while the girls helped their grandmother aboard the ship, Selena insisted on treating Ray's wound. Her fingers were cool against his skin as she applied a healing gel that immediately numbed the pain. "Your people have remarkable medical technology," Ray observed, watching the edges of the gash begin to close. "And yours have remarkable courage," she countered, her eyes meeting his. "Few would stand against 6 Krell warriors to protect strangers." "I've been fighting one war or another most of my life," Ray admitted. "It becomes instinct." "Yet you chose isolation afterward." "It wasn't a question. I can sense your solitude, Ray Mercer. It echoes within you." Ray looked away, uncomfortable with her perception. "War changes a man. So does compassion." Selene finished dressing his wound and stood, her face now level with his as he sat on the workbench. "Why did you really help my family?" The question caught him off guard. "I told you." "You told me what you thought I wanted to hear," she interrupted gently. "I want to know the truth." Ray considered deflecting again, but found himself unwilling to lie to those luminous eyes. When I saw your daughters and mother at my door, it reminded me why I fought in the first place. Not for territory or politics, but for people. To protect those who couldn't protect themselves. Celine's expression softened. She reached up, her slender blue fingers tracing the scar that ran along his jawline. Humans are fascinating creatures, so fragile, yet so resilient, so capable of violence, yet equally capable of profound kindness. The air between them seemed to charge with electricity. Ray was acutely aware of her closeness, of the subtle differences in her anatomy, the slight luminescence of her skin, the way her hair moved as if in a gentle current. "We should join the others, friend," he said, his voice rougher than intended. Celine nodded, but neither moved. "My people believe that when lives intersect in moments of crisis, it creates a bond that transcends ordinary connection." Her hand still rested against his face. "Do you feel it, Ray Mercer?" He did, a pull toward her that defied rational explanation. In the span of hours, this alien woman had awakened something in him he'd thought long dead. "Yeah," he admitted simply. Her lips curved into a smile that transformed her face. "Then perhaps my family's misfortune has led to something unexpected." She leaned forward, pressing her forehead against his in what he recognized as an Australian gesture of deep connection. The contact sent a cascade of sensations through Ray. Warmth, attraction, and something deeper that he couldn't name. When she pulled back, her eyes held a promise that made his heart race. "Now," she said, her voice carrying a new intimacy, "let's get my family to safety. And then, Ray Mercer, I would very much like to learn more about the human who has changed our lives forever." Celine's ship, the Luminara, sliced through the atmosphere with barely a tremor. Ray sat in the co-pilot's chair, watching her deft blue fingers dance across the control panel. The girls had settled their grandmother in the small medical bay, where automated systems were already working to stabilize her condition. "Your mother seems worse than simple exhaustion," Ray observed. "What's really wrong with her?" Celine's hand stilled momentarily. "You're perceptive for a human? 15 years of war teaches you to spot when someone's holding back information?" She sighed, engaging the autopilot before turning to face him. "My mother isn't just a researcher. She's one of our foremost xenobiologists, specializing in predatory species." The Outpost Ontario was a cover for her classified work. "On the Vorax," Ray guessed. Celine nodded. "After the war, when the hegemony claimed all their Vorax were contained, my mother had her doubts. She began studying their biology, looking for weaknesses." Her voice dropped. "She found one. A neurological vulnerability that could neutralize them without killing them. And someone doesn't want that information getting out," Ray concluded. "The hegemony makes trillions selling Vorax as security forces to the highest bidders. A weakness would devalue their most profitable export." Celine's eyes hardened. Mother encoded her findings into her own genetic structure using a modified retrovirus. That's what's making her ill. Her body is fighting the foreign DNA. Ray whistled low. "That's either brilliance or insanity." "With my mother, often both." A small smile played at Celine's lips. "The data can only be extracted at an Australian medical facility. We're heading to Nexus Station. It's the closest one with the necessary equipment." The ship's comm system chimed, indicating an incoming transmission. Celine activated the screen, revealing the stern face of an older Australian male with silver-streaked hair and elaborate insignia on his uniform. "Cultural attaché valérien," he said formally. "Your unscheduled departure from diplomatic duties requires explanation." "High Counselor Perrin," Celine replied, her posture straightening. "I received a distress signal from my family. They survived the Vorax attack on the research outpost." The counselor's expression remained impassive. "Your family was presumed lost. This is unexpected news." His gaze shifted to Ray. "And who is this human?" "Ray Mercer," Celine answered before Ray could speak. "He sheltered my family and defended them against Krell scavengers at great personal risk. He's under my protection." Perrin's eyes narrowed. "I see. Be advised, attaché, that bringing non-diplomatic personnel to Nexus Station requires proper authorization, particularly humans." The way he said humans made Ray's jaw tighten. "I'm invoking Emergency Protocol 7, Celine replied coolly. Family extraction under hostile conditions. Very well, Perrin conceded reluctantly. But upon arrival, the human will be restricted to diplomatic quarters, and the High Council expects a full briefing on your mother's research status. The screen went dark before Celine could respond. Friendly guy, Ray remarked dryly. Councillor Perrin represents the conservative faction, Celine explained. They're cautious about human-Australian relations. Cautious? He looked at me like I was something stuck to his shoe. Celine's expression softened. My people have a complicated history with humans. During first contact, there were misunderstandings. What kind of misunderstandings? Australians are empathic touch telepaths. Early diplomatic missions found human emotions overwhelming, raw, powerful, unfiltered. Her eyes met his. Some of my people fear that intensity. Others are drawn to it. The air between them seemed to charge again, as it had in the workshop. Ray became acutely aware of how close they were in the cockpit, of the subtle luminescence of her blue skin in the dim light. And which are you? He asked, his voice lower than intended. Celine's lips curved into a smile that sent heat coursing down through him. What do you think, Ray Mercer? Before he could respond, Fina appeared in the doorway. Grandmother's asking for you both. In the medical bay, Inine lay on a diagnostic bed, surrounded by softly humming equipment. Her condition had stabilized, but her silver hair had lost its luster and her skin had taken on a concerning grayish tint. The data, she said weakly as they entered. They know I have it. Who knows, Mother? Celine asked, taking her hand. The hegemony. They sent the Vorax deliberately, Inine's eyes fluttered, and they have allies within the council. Ray and Celine exchanged alarmed glances. Perrin? Celine whispered. Inine nodded faintly. Be careful at Nexus. Not everyone wants this research revealed. The ship's alert system suddenly blared. Celine rushed back to the cockpit, Ray close behind. The tactical display showed a vessel on an intercept course, a sleek, predatory craft with distinctive Krell modifications. Bounty Hunter, Ray identified. High-end too. That's a Talon-class pursuit ship. How do you know that? Selena asked, already adjusting their course. I helped design countermeasures against them during the war. Ray studied the readouts. He's alone, but that ship's armed to the teeth. Celine's fingers flew across the controls. The Luminera is fast, but lightly armed. We can't outfight him. Then we outthink him. Ray pointed to a dense asteroid field ahead. Can you get us in there? I can fly circles around a Krell, Celine said with unexpected fierceness. Strap in. What followed was the most impressive display of piloting Ray had ever witnessed. Celine guided the Luminara through gaps in the asteroid field that seemed impossibly narrow, her movements fluid and precise. The bounty hunter followed, firing sporadically when he had a clear shot. He's good, Ray admitted, as plasma bolts streaked past their viewport. I'm better, Celine replied, a hint of pride in her voice. She executed a daring maneuver, using a spinning asteroid as cover before doubling back behind their pursuer. We have one defensive cannon, she told Ray. Control panel to your right. Ray activated the weapon system, muscle memory from countless battles taking over. He waited for the perfect moment as their pursuer realized the trap and began to turn. Now, he whispered and fired. The shot wasn't meant to destroy. The small cannon couldn't penetrate the bounty hunter's shields, but it struck the ship's maneuvering thrusters, sending it into an uncontrolled spin. The Krell vessel clipped an asteroid, further damaging its stabilizers. That won't stop him for long, Ray warned. It doesn't need to. Celine pointed to the navigation display. Nexus station is just ahead. As they approached the massive space station, a gleaming wheel of silver and blue, Ray felt a growing unease. They'd escaped immediate danger, but he suspected they were flying into something potentially worse. Celine seemed to sense his thoughts. Her hand found his, cool blue fingers intertwining with his larger, warmer ones. Whatever awaits us there, she said softly, we face it together. The simple touch and her words ignited something primal in Ray. He turned to her, finding her opalescent eyes already on him, filled with an emotion that transcended species. Together, he agreed, and in that moment, He knew his life had irrevocably changed course, like a ship altering its trajectory to follow an unexpected but irresistible new star. The docking clamps engaged with a resonant clang as the Luminara settled into its berth at Nexus Station. Through the viewport, Ray could see the gleaming architecture of the Australian facility, elegant curves of silver and blue that seemed to flow like water frozen in mid-motion. "Remember," Celine cautioned, "let me do the talking." Ray nodded, though the soldier in him bristled at playing the passive role. The girls had been instructed to remain with their grandmother in the medical bay until Celine could arrange proper security. The airlock cycled open to reveal 4 Australian security officers in formal uniforms, led by a stern-faced male with captain's insignia. "Cultural Attaché Valerian," he greeted Celine with a curt nod. "I am Captain Thering. High Counselor Perrin has ordered special protocols for your arrival." "My mother requires immediate medical attention," Celine replied, her diplomatic training evident in her composed tone. "Medical personnel are standing by." Theron's gaze shifted to Ray, his expression cooling noticeably. "The human will be escorted to diplomatic quarantine for processing." Ray tensed. "I stay with the family." "That won't be possible," Theron stated flatly. "Station regulations regarding non-diplomatic personnel are clear." Celine placed a restraining hand on Ray's arm. "Captain, this man saved my family at great personal risk. He's under my diplomatic protection." "Counselor Perrin's orders supersede diplomatic courtesy in matters of station security." Theron gestured and 2 officers moved toward Ray. Before the situation could escalate, a new voice interrupted. "Perhaps I can offer a compromise." A female Australian in medical attire approached from the docking bay entrance. Her white hair was styled in an elaborate braid, and she carried herself with quiet authority. "Dr. Naren," Celine greeted her with obvious relief. "The human may accompany the patient to medical as my assistant," Dr. Naren suggested. "Under my supervision, of course." Captain Theron hesitated, clearly displeased but unwilling to openly challenge a senior medical officer. "Very well, but he remains your responsibility, Doctor." As the security detail escorted them through the station's gleaming corridors, Ray noticed the stares from passing Australians, some curious, others openly hostile. Celine walked close beside him, occasionally brushing her hand against his in what he recognized as deliberate reassurance. "Dr. Narain is an old friend of my mother," she whispered. "We can trust her." In the medical center, Inine was transferred to an advanced treatment pod. Dr. Naren quickly shooed away the security officers, sealing the doors once they departed. "We don't have much time," she said, her professional demeanor dropping to reveal urgency. "Perrin knows about the research data. He's already contacted the hegemony representative on station." "How do you know this?" Celine demanded. "Because I was supposed to be part of it." Dr. Naren's expression was grim. "They approached me 3 months ago, offered me a research position with the hegemony at 10 times my current salary. All I had to do was report on your mother's work." "But you refused," Ray guessed. "I pretended to accept." Dr. Naren activated a complex array of medical equipment, which is why I know they're planning to eliminate Inine once the data is extracted. They've already arranged an accident during the procedure. Celine paled. "We need to get her off the station." "Impossible in her condition," the doctor countered. "The extraction process must happen here, but I've prepared a secure lab where we can perform it without oversight." "What about the girls?" Ray asked. "My quarters are nearby," Celine said. "They'll be safe there with proper security." Dr. Naren handed Celine a data crystal. "This contains evidence of the hegemony's illegal genetic experiments, the real reason they want your mother's research suppressed. It proves they've been weaponizing the Vorex beyond the terms of the peace treaty." Ray examined the crystal. "This could restart the war if it's not handled carefully." "Or prevent one," Celine countered, "by exposing their violations before they're ready to strike." A soft chime from Dr. Naren's communication device interrupted them. "Security is requesting an update. You need to go now. I'll begin preparing your mother for the procedure." In Celine's quarters, a spacious apartment with panoramic views of the station's central atrium, the girls settled in with wide-eyed fascination at the luxurious surroundings. Ray established defensive positions out of habit, checking sight lines and potential entry points. "You never stop being a soldier, do you?" Celine observed, watching him from the doorway of her private chamber. Old habits, he replied with a half smile. Kept me alive this long. She approached him, her movements fluid and graceful. In the privacy of her quarters, away from public scrutiny, something in her demeanor had changed, become more open, more intimate. We have a few hours before we need to return to medical, she said softly. The girls are safe here. Ray became acutely aware of their solitude, of the way her luminescent skin seemed to glow in the dim light of her quarters. The attraction that had been building between them since their first meeting now felt like an electrical current running beneath his skin. Celine, he began, uncertain how to navigate the cultural gulf between them. She placed a finger against his lips. My people believe that life debts create a special bond, one that transcends ordinary relationships. Her opalescent eyes held his. But what I feel for you goes beyond gratitude, Ray Mercer. Her hand moved to cup his face, and Ray felt the now familiar warmth of her touch telepathy, but deeper, more intimate than before. Emotions flowed between them. His admiration for her courage and grace, her fascination with his strength and compassion, and beneath it all, a mutual desire that needed no translation. In times of danger, she whispered, my species feels an instinctual need to forge connections, to affirm life in the face of potential loss. Her free hand traced the contours of his chest through his shirt. Is it the same for humans? Ray's breath caught as her touch ignited sensations that had lain dormant during his years of self-imposed isolation. Yes, he managed, though we don't usually discuss it so directly. A smile curved her lips. Another cultural difference. My people believe honesty in attraction is sacred. She stepped closer, the space between them charged with possibility. And I am very attracted to you, Ray Mercer. What followed was a revelation, a joining of two beings from different worlds who found in each other something both alien and familiar. Their differences, temperature, texture, the subtle bioluminescence of her skin against his tanned human flesh, only heightened the experience. Where humans were passionate and direct, Australians were sensual and patient, creating a complementary rhythm that left them both breathless. Afterward, they lay entwined, her white hair flowing around them like a living thing. Ray traced patterns on her blue skin, marveling at how natural it felt to be with her. Your emotions are so powerful, she murmured against his chest. So raw and unfiltered. It's intoxicating to an Australian. Is that why some of your people fear humans? They fear what they don't understand. She propped herself up on one elbow, studying his face. The intensity of human emotion can be overwhelming for a touch telepath, but it can also be addictive. Her comm device chimed before he could respond. Dr. Naren's voice came through, tense and hurried. They're moving up the timetable. Perrin is coming to the medical center personally. You need to get here now. Celine was already moving, reaching for her uniform. We're on our way. As they dressed quickly, Ray caught her hand. Whatever happens next, I want you to know. I know, she interrupted gently, touching his face. I felt it, and I feel the same. In that moment, with danger closing in around them, Ray realized how completely his life had transformed in less than 2 days, from solitary exile to the center of an interstellar conspiracy. All because he'd opened his door to strangers during a sandstorm, and he wouldn't change a single moment of it. Ray and Selene sprinted through the gleaming corridors of Nexus Station, dodging startled Australians. The medical center's entrance loomed ahead, its doors flanked by 2 security officers who straightened at their approach. Cultural attaché, one began formally. High Counselor Perrin has restricted access. Override Protocol Valerian Alpha 7. Celine interrupted, her diplomatic authority evident in every syllable. Emergency situation. The guards hesitated, torn between conflicting authorities. Ray didn't wait for them to decide. He stepped forward, his combat-hardened gaze locking with the lead guards. Son, I've fought in 15 campaigns across 7 systems, he said quietly. I'm walking through those doors one way or another. Your choice how? Something in Ray's tone, the absolute certainty of a human who had faced death countless times, made the guards step aside. Inside, they found Perrin standing over Aneen's treatment pod with 2 hegemony officials, tall, gray-skinned aliens with elongated features. Dr. Naren stood rigidly nearby, her posture betraying her tension. "Attaché Valérien," Perrin said smoothly, "your timing is impeccable. We were just discussing your mother's treatment options." "I'm sure you were," Celine replied coldly. "Step away from my mother, counselor." Perrin's gaze shifted to Ray, his distaste evident. "This human has no authority here. Remove him." "He stays," Celine countered. "And we know everything, Perrin. About the illegal genetic experiments, about your arrangement with the hegemony, about the planned accident for my mother." The taller hegemony official stepped forward. "These are serious accusations, attaché. Without evidence." "We have the evidence," Ray interrupted, holding up Dr. Naren's data crystal. "And we've already transmitted copies to multiple secure locations." It was a bluff. They hadn't had time. But Ray delivered it with the conviction of a seasoned combat liar. The hegemony officials exchanged nervous glances. Perrin recovered quickly. "Whatever you think you know is irrelevant. The extraction procedure is already underway." A warning light flashed on Anine's pod. Dr. Naren pushed past the hegemony officials. "You've initiated the extraction without proper stabilization. You'll kill her." As the doctor frantically worked the pod's controls, the station's alarms suddenly blared. A voice over the intercom announced, "Security alert! Unauthorized vessel has breached docking protocols. All personnel to emergency stations." The tactical display on the medical center's wall activated automatically, showing a familiar ship forcing its way into a docking bay. The Krell bounty hunter had returned with two larger vessels flanking him. "Hegemony reinforcements," Ray muttered to Selene. "They're not taking chances." Perrin smiled thinly. "It seems our associates have grown impatient." Ray's mind raced through options, discarding each as quickly as they formed. They were outgunned, outnumbered, and on foreign territory, but he'd faced worse odds before. "Selene," he said quietly, "can you access the station's communication systems from here?" She nodded, understanding dawning in her eyes. "The emergency broadcast protocol, but it would need authorization from a council member," Perrin finished smugly, "which you don't have." "She has better," came a weak voice from the pod. Inine had regained consciousness, her eyes clear despite her frail condition. "She has the Valerian family override, established after the first contact crisis when my grandmother served as chief counselor." Perrin's face drained of color. "That protocol was discontinued decades ago." "The code was," Inine agreed, "but not the hardware integration. Isn't that right, Doctor?" Dr. Naren smiled for the first time. "Correct. And I've just completed the data extraction. The research is secure." She held up a small vial of luminescent blue fluid. "And your vital signs are stabilizing, Annie." Ray turned to Celine. "Do it. Broadcast everything. Your mother's research and the evidence of the hegemony violations. To every species in the sector." "That would violate dozens of diplomatic protocols," Perrin sputtered. "It would also prevent a war," Celine countered, already moving to the communication console, "by ensuring no one can suppress the truth." The hegemony officials moved to stop her, but Ray stepped between them, his stance making it clear they'd have to go through him first. One reached for a concealed weapon, but Ray was faster, disarming him with a swift, precise strike that left the alien gasping. "Humans," Ray said conversationally as the second hegemony official backed away. "We're not as strong as some species, not as technologically advanced as others. But we've survived because we're adaptable, determined, and really damn good at improvising when our backs are against the wall." Celine worked the console with practiced efficiency, broadcasting in 30 seconds. The station shuddered as the Krell ships attempted to force entry through another docking bay. Security alerts cascaded across the displays. "This is madness," Perrin hissed. "You'll destroy decades of careful diplomacy." "No," Anine said, sitting up in her pod with Dr. Naren's assistance. "We'll establish honest diplomacy for the first time." The console chimed as Celine completed the transmission sequence. "Broadcast initiated. The Vorax vulnerability data and the evidence of illegal experimentation are being transmitted simultaneously to all major powers in the sector." On the tactical display, they watched as the hegemony and Krell ships suddenly broke off their attack. Within minutes, the communication console lit up with incoming transmissions from a dozen different species. "The Terran Alliance is deploying a battle group to Nexus Station," Celine reported, reading the messages. "For our protection." And she looked up, eyes wide. "The Australian High Council has just voted to remove Perrin from office pending investigation. They're offering formal thanks to Ray Mercer for his service to the Australian people." Ray shrugged, uncomfortable with the sudden recognition. "I just opened my door during a sandstorm." "And changed the course of interstellar politics," Dr. Nairn added dryly. "Security forces loyal to the Council arrived to take the Perrin and the hegemony officials into custody. As they were led away, Perrin turned back with a final glare. This isn't over. The Council won't accept a human interfering in Australian affairs." "Actually," came a new voice as the medical center doors opened again, "the Council has already voted on that matter as well." An elderly Australian male entered, his elaborate robes marking him as a high-ranking official. Celine and Dr. Nairn immediately bowed their heads in respect. "Chief Counselor Talon," Celine greeted him. "I wasn't aware you were on Nexus Station." "I arrived with the emergency response team." Talon approached Ray, studying him with keen interest. "So you're the human who's caused such a commotion?" "Not intentionally, sir," Ray replied. Talon smiled. "The best changes rarely are intentional, Mr. Mercer. Your actions have forced my people to confront our prejudices and our complacency." He turned to Anine. "Your research will save countless lives, old friend, and expose corruption that has festered too long." "What happens now?" Celine asked. "Now," Talon said, "we rebuild trust, beginning with a new diplomatic initiative." He faced Ray again. "The Council has voted to create a special liaison position between humans and Australians. We would be honored if you would consider accepting the role, Mr. Mercer." Ray blinked in surprise. "Oh, no, I'm a soldier, not a diplomat." "Sometimes the best diplomats are those who understand the cost of failed diplomacy," Talon replied. "Besides, you already have a rather personal connection to our cultural attaché." Ray felt heat rise to his face as Celine slipped her hand into his, not hiding their connection. "Australians value honesty in all things, Ray Mercer," she said softly, "including matters of the heart." 6 months later, Ray stood on the observation deck of the newly established Human-Australian Cultural Exchange Center on Nexus Station. The diplomatic fallout from what was now called the Valariant Disclosure had reshaped interstellar politics. The hegemony had been forced to abandon its illegal Vorex program, and a new peace treaty, with actual teeth, had been negotiated. Anine, fully recovered, had become the head of a joint Human-Australian research initiative studying peaceful applications of her Vorex findings. Dr. Nairn served as her deputy, their friendship stronger than ever. And the girls, Fina and Tira, had adapted to station life with the resilience of youth. Fina had developed an interest in diplomacy, shadowing Ray during negotiations, while Tira's artistic talents had blossomed under Australian tutelage. "Contemplating your handiwork?" Celine asked, joining him at the viewport. Her white hair floated gracefully around her shoulders as she slipped an arm around his waist. Just thinking about how different my life was a few months ago," Ray replied, pulling her close. "Alone in a workshop on a desert planet, fixing evaporators and hiding from the universe." "Do you miss it?" she asked, her opalescent eyes searching his. Ray thought about the family he'd found, the brilliant, passionate woman in his arms, the wise, determined grandmother who'd become a mentor, the two remarkable girls who looked to him with trust and affection. He thought about purpose and connection, about the bridge he was helping to build between two species. "Not for a second," he answered truthfully. Celine smiled, the bioluminescence of her skin brightening with emotion in the way he'd come to adore. "My grandmother has a saying, the universe places us exactly where we need to be, even when we don't know we need to be there." Ray chuckled. "On Earth, we just call that luck." "Luck, fate, cosmic design," Celine mused. "Whatever brought you to open your door that night during the sandstorm, I'm grateful for it." As they stood together watching ships from a dozen worlds dock at the station, Ray reflected on how a simple act of kindness had cascaded into something that changed not just his life, but potentially the course of interstellar relations. Humanity's greatest strength, he'd come to believe, wasn't technology or military might, but the capacity for compassion, the willingness to open a door to strangers during a storm and offer shelter without question. Sometimes that was all it took to change everything.